What is causing Gauteng's coalition governments to fracture and collapse? The DA's Mpopalatse was stripped of her mayoral chains in Joburg after her coalition failed to muster the votes to save her. In the East, Tanya Campbell's future as Ekurhuleni mayor is uncertain as the EFF positions itself to piggyback off the ANC and enter power. Meanwhile, the DA-led alliance in Tshwane faces serious allegations of financial mismanagement. Let's try and make sense of it all with political analyst Wayne Sussman, who joins me in studio. Wayne, thank you so much for coming in. So, last year, political analyst Lukhona Mguni said, if the DA does not have serious engagements with the EFF, I do not see how they think of securing any of the municipalities. So we know that the DA has said numerous times that they are not going to work with the EFF. We've seen the EFF and the ANC having their own spats, and now they seem to be in almost a kingmaker position where it sounds as if the stability of the new coalition in Joburg hinges very much on the negotiations that still have to take place in Ekurhuleni and in Tshwane. Am I reading the situation correctly?
You are largely reading the situation correctly. It's going to be a fascinating few weeks and months because you're correct. It all rests on Ekurhuleni. Remember, up until today, there hasn't been an EFF mayor in a councillor in South Africa. And here is a golden opportunity for the Red Berets to show South Africans how they could take a metro forward. So that is why that's one of the things we have to watch in the next few weeks. And you have to understand the EFF here. They didn't want to help the ANC, to be seen to propping up the ANC, but the DA wasn't interested in working with them. That's a promise they made to their voters. And while the EFF voted for the DA candidates, there was still no rapprochement, and this is how we find ourselves in this situation. However, once the ANC and EFF do find an arrangement, which I think might be specific around Gauteng, possibly include KwaZulu-Natal, but let's focus on Gauteng, no small party will be needed in Ekurhuleni. But the smaller parties, the ANC and the EFF would still need the smaller parties in Johannesburg. And one kingmaker emerges in that scenario. One party which will have the power to either remove Thapelo Ahmad or remove Dada Morero if he returns, and that is the Patriotic Alliance. They'll emerge as the only significant power kingmaker in Johannesburg politics.
So two questions here, very much conjoined. In the press briefing post today's council sitting, Gauteng Premier Panyaza Lesufi said that it is insulting to say that the ANC uses somebody. And very much akin to that, or conjoined to that statement, is the fact that there have been questions about the fact that they've clearly said that Thapelo Ahmad and the new committee, the new leadership, will be an interim leadership. So what do you make of those two ideas next to each other? So,
correct, the ANC can take that mayoral chain away, and the EFF can take that mayoral chain away from Thapelo Ahmad very soon. But remember, the Speaker has quite a lot of power, and the Speaker is very happy with the fact that there's another smaller party. Just to remind the viewers that Al Jamaa was the 9th most popular party in Johannesburg in 2021, and COPE, who has the Speaker position, the 15th most popular party. Between them, they have 1.48% of the vote in Johannesburg, and they have the two most powerful positions. But I think what's very, very important here, you mentioned the name Panyaza Lesufi. He's the new Premier. He's almost certainly going to be the Gauteng candidate for Premier in 2024. He wants to prove himself to Gauteng residents and Gauteng voters, and that's why Johannesburg's so key. That's why this deal with the EFF is so key, that they can show the residents in the Ekurhuleni on the East Rand, in the economic powerhouse of the city of Johannesburg, that an ANC-led coalition, or a coalition which includes the ANC as a dominant player, will result in better service delivery for the residents of this province.
Very important here, that's all within the context of national elections to take place next year. We've seen failed coalitions again and again. And we've almost grown tired of talking about why coalitions continue to crumble very much after those deals have been sealed. Within weeks, we find contestation of the leadership positions, kingmakers walking away from deals. Are we really in a position to look seriously at a national coalition government, given the fragility of coalition governments at municipal level?
But some good news and some bad news for those who've been scarred by coalitions. Let's first deal with provincial legislatures quickly. There are less seats in the Gauteng legislature and the Western Cape legislature and the KwaZulu-Natal legislature than many of these metro chambers. So it means that there's less opportunity for smaller parties to hold the bigger parties to ransom, because it's harder, there's a higher threshold to get in. However, when it comes to Parliament, there are 400 seats in Parliament. You actually need less than 0.25%, a quarter of a percent to get in. So we might well end up in a scenario, that's a scenario I'm betting on right now, that if the ANC falls just under 50%, they can go to a smaller party, maybe a party which hasn't even been dreamed up yet, which might be the party which brings the ANC back. So smaller parties are here to stay. Either the larger parties need to work out how to work with each other, whether it's Action SA, the DA, EFF, ANC, or we're going to see many of those smaller parties who've got banners behind you emerge into the picture and demand their piece of the pie.
Some people say the DA has made a serious blunder here. That on the one side, they're sticking to their guns, they're refusing to work with the EFF, as you said, because they promised their voters they wouldn't. However, that's cost them dearly. In Joburg, it's likely to cost them dearly in both Ekurhuleni and in Tshwane. Do you think there's room to take a step back on those kind of hardline policies and relationship stances for the sake of working together and for stability?
So let's just remove Tshwane from that quickly, because there are natural bedfellows who are not getting on. Let's be categorical about that. The DA and Action SA are fighting with each other more than they're fighting with the ANC or the EFF. But in Tshwane, you have parties like the DA, Action SA, the Freedom Front and the ACDP who can form a stable government with, I think, COPE. However, in Ekurhuleni and Johannesburg, this idea keeps on getting put forward that the DA doesn't take smaller coalition partners seriously, and that the DA is responsible for handing the mayoral chain back to the ANC. At the same time, the DA said, look, we have a line in the sand. We cannot just agree to give smaller parties these key positions for the sake of continuing to hold on to the mayoral chain and for possibly bringing in a coalition partner who might not have the same objectives for us. So I think there's a lot of merit in both. I'm giving you a poor answer. In both what the Action SA is saying and both what the DA is saying. They're saying Action SA was, we've got to hold on to power, do whatever we can to bring the Patriotic Alliance back, and the DA said no to that. And that's why this situation arose.
One thing that keeps popping up when we talk about coalitions and stability is not so much accountability as it is transparency at that initiation level. Are we moving to a place, do you think that's relevant? And B, are we moving to a place where we're seeing more transparency for residents of South Africa about what exactly the details are of these agreements?
Well, I think it's fundamentally important that wherever there is a coalition agreement, that the residents in that city or town or rural part of South Africa get to see it, get to see how the parties arose with the fact that a party of 3 seats became mayor, because it might be very well justified, and what each of the coalition partners are bringing to the table, what are they getting out of it, what are they going to do in those specific portfolios. Residents ought to know. Residents, there are millions of South Africans who now live under coalition governments. This is a pretty new concept in South Africa. they need to see that coalition governments work for them. We need examples over the next couple of years before the next local government elections and actually before the next national elections that coalition governments can work, and this is the framework, so that ultimately the residents benefit and not just those who sit in those powerful positions.
And some understanding of what the deal breakers are, so that when these deals go awry, citizens understand where the crumbling happens.
There's got to be a mechanism for resolution. We can't have motions of no confidence. We can't have points of order, speakers adjourning, cancelling council meetings. The councillors need to spend less time in the council chambers, more time dealing with service delivery and sorting out the fundamental problems facing many of our cities and towns.
Thank you so much for coming into studio and for talking to us. That was political analyst Wayne Sussman giving us some insights in today's happenings at the Joburg Council Chamber, where Al-Jama candidate Thapelo Ahmad was elected into the position of Joburg Executive Mayor.